Football Manager is moving to a brand new graphics engine. So let's talk about that. So for those of you who haven't seen this, earlier this afternoon, SI published a blog post, or a development update, I suppose, about the future of Football Manager, and in it is contained some very, very interesting information indeed. I will, of course, link to the full blog post in the description so you can read it in your own time. It's quite long, but in today's video, we're just going to go over some of the things that are linked in that and talked about, and I'll give some of my own thoughts about it too, because there is some outrageous stuff in here that I can't wait to talk about. Now, we'll get to the really juicy stuff about the new graphics engine in a little bit, but I thought we'd take things as they come along, because there's some really interesting stuff in the early stages of this post that I want to make sure that we acknowledge as well. First is the fact that the game has gone from on average getting nearly 2 million players a year to this game's cycle getting 5 million players, which is an enormous increase. And I think that has a lot to do with the fact that the game is now more accessible than ever on the consoles, with the PS5 release this year, obviously Xbox before, but also with the fact that it's on Game Pass too, is just giving a whole load of new players an opportunity to try the game out, at least on the console version, and maybe even convert to the PC version later. And I don't think I'd be alone in saying that at times I have felt worried that perhaps there would be more of a shift towards the consoles and perhaps leave the PC one behind, and maybe some of the new features would be aimed towards console players and, you know, leaving some of the more hardcores over here on PC a little bit left in the dark, mostly due to players on different platforms potentially having different experiences and different expectations from what they want from the game. But really, that amount of growth can only be a good thing, because it means there's going to be more investment available for the game that we all love, and that can only be a good thing, right? But I do like that they then go on to acknowledge the fact that some of the more hardcore players, such as myself and probably a lot of you watching this, were feeling a bit disappointed and let down by some of the features in FM23, and it does seem that they themselves felt like they hadn't delivered perhaps what they wanted to at the same time. And it's good to know that we weren't just going mad, I suppose, as it even says that they had to drop a couple of the features for the new game just to ensure that there was a working version of it on release, which does make sense and sort of tracks with how a lot of us felt that perhaps there was a few things that might have been lacking in the game this year, or at the very least lacking in new improvement. And I should caveat this by saying that I've never thought that FM23 is a bad game. In fact, I would go as far as to say it's easily the best game that they have ever made. My issue has always been one of a lack of progression on FM23, and at times it did feel a little bit like an FM22.5, so to speak. But do note that whenever I'm critical about things like this, it always does come from a place of wanting the game to be the best it can possibly be, and I know the developers obviously want that as well. I do love that the average player is playing for 200 to 300 hours, which has to be up there as some of the highest of any, particularly on a yearly release cycle. Admittedly, mine is a little bit higher than that. I think I might need to go outside a little bit more. I'll be honest, when I saw the thing about FM24 being the last of its kind, that initially did scare me quite a lot, because my first thought was games as a service subscription model, and I've always had apprehensions about what that would actually mean for the game that we really, really like. Thankfully, that is not the case as we read on. Now, obviously, the post doesn't talk in any great detail about actual features that we're expecting to see in FM24, as it is literally June, and that's extremely early in the cycle. But the first big thing I want to draw your attention to is this. As a sneak preview, I can share progress that's been made towards one of the most requested features on the forums of the last 20 years, and that's the ability to transfer save games from one FM version to the next. Yes, please. I, as just a player and enjoyer of FM, have wanted this to be a thing for ages. Even since before I was making content and during my 2-year sabbatical, that was something I would have really loved. Now, as a content creator, this doesn't affect me that much, because I like to start new saves with new cycles and whatnot, because it's my job and that's what I have to do. But just as a general player, this is awesome. And I know this is something that a lot of you watching this video right now are probably going to be extremely hyped about, because we all know it does suck having to give up that long-term save you've been doing when the brand new game comes out. And as much as the breath of fresh air can be there, sometimes you've just got that one regen that you really want to see how they do. So being able to take him over to the next version of the game is dope. And especially this last line in the paragraph here. It's not only for this year's version of the game that this feature will be active, it is also the plan to bring saved games from FM24 into FM25. And that I really like, because, you know, you could always worry that it might be a one-off feature, but this indicates that it is definitely something to be using going forward. And I like that. Long-term planning. No more tidbits in here about what to expect exactly for FM24, as of course I suspect we'll find that stuff out much, much closer to the time when there's more opportunity to build hype. Makes sense. And this, my friends, is where things start to get extremely juicy, and brings us to the title of this video, as it seems through Project Dragonfly that they really have been doing a deep dive into their technology and acknowledging the fact that a lot of changes have really been lacking over the last several years, with the last match engine update being in 2017 and the UI even longer ago, which is genuinely mad. I actually didn't realize it had been that long. I'm getting old. I love that they also reference how bad the new gens have looked since that point. I understand the reasoning for it, but they have not looked great in this period, as we all know. And I also get the impression from reading this that actually some of this stuff seems like it was supposed to happen sooner, but it does seem like that little thing called COVID might have got in the way, and that might also lean some credence as to the reason that maybe FM23 was slightly feature light, as it does, you sort of get the impression that perhaps some of this stuff was supposed to happen a little bit sooner, which is understandable. But this is the thing. So FM25 console and FM25 Touch will be our first Football Manager releases on a new engine, Unity. Oh. They then go on to talk about some of the benefits that they hope to be able to bring to FM through using Unity as the graphics engine. But I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the other games that use Unity, as the only one they actually explicitly reference here is City Skylines. But we're also talking Hollow Knight, RimWorld, Subnautica, obviously City Skylines, Rust, Ori and the Blind Forest, which looks bloody beautiful, by the way, Cuphead, just to name a few of the big ones currently. And I'm sure there's tons more. And as I said about Ori, some of those games look absolutely gorgeous. They also talk about the fact that this is most likely going to involve upping the minimum specs for the game, which does feel completely understandable to me, as I've often felt a little bit like supporting some extremely old machines and low specs has potentially been holding the game back a little bit, as it's maybe prevented them from doing the cool stuff at the very high end. But I also kind of admire the fact that they've wanted to make sure that as many people could play the game as physically possible. But now moving into the era of game streaming and stuff like that, it feels like it's less important to have that. However, it does feel like I might well have to actually finally build a new PC for FM25, because there's no way in balls that my graphics card is going to handle that. This thing can barely handle me recording this video right now. So Nvidia, hit me up. And it's also worth noting that a lot of the games I mentioned above, some of them aren't the most visually stunning games possible, and some of them are quite sort of simplistic and pragmatic. However, what really stands out about those games is the way that the animation works. It's very fluid and very nice and smooth, and I think that's something that would be really cool to see in an FM match engine. That would be amazing, actually. It's also kind of cool that they discuss how the things they've learned from doing this, some of which will actually feature in FM24. It specifically references ball physics and player locomotion, and well, you know how I feel about player locomotion in the game. It can often feel a little bit like players are just kind of skating through each other and a little bit on rails at times, though that has improved, I would say, on this year's game. And personally, I've actually felt the ball physics have improved quite dramatically over the last couple of releases as well. So I guess that is a little tidbit of things to expect for FM24, I suppose. Now, this isn't actually talked about in the blog post, but it got me thinking about the huge modding communities that exist for games that are built in Unity. And I suspect that this might open up a lot more doors for the customization of the game. And when you think about how FM is customized currently, there is a wealth of customization available with the packs that you can get for faces, skins, badges, all that sort of jazz. And it does make you wonder what could be possible with Unity, and maybe even more powerful tools could be brought in. I couldn't possibly imagine what could be done with that, as I don't have a background there, but I imagine any of you that are familiar with Unity are probably already thinking of the cool things that could potentially be done, and what might even be done in the base game. Now, given that these graphics engine changes are for FM25, it's doubtful that we'll see any examples of this anytime soon, given that the game isn't going to be coming out for, what, another year and a half, I suppose. But I am now filled with optimism for it, and very much look forward to seeing what they do come up with over the next year and a half or so. And lastly, they go on to talk about the women's game, which has been rumored to be coming into the game for pretty much every game for the last 4 years. So it's nice to see that that does seem to be finally happening for FM25. And I guess that does make sense to move it into the new graphics engine. This side of the sport is growing massively at the moment, and I really do respect the fact that they've taken the time to implement this correctly rather than just half-arsing it. And if nothing else, it's going to give us a huge number of new leagues to play with that will be in the base game, and that can really only be a good thing. So to sum this up myself, biggest thing that we currently know about FM24 is the fact that save files will be transferable from FM23. That's freaking sick. Look forward to that being a possibility for all of you as well. The biggest thing, of course, being the match engine and entire game engine, it seems, changing over to FM25 for Unity, other way around. You know what I mean? Which honestly, just my brain has been firing ever since I read this, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what they come up with. And lastly, the introduction of the women's game, and that's just really, really cool to see that finally coming to fruition. But that's just what me, some rando in a chair with a microphone, thinks. What do you think about all these changes? Are you excited? I mean, I'd like to think you would be. Do you have any apprehensions about certain things as well? Let me know in the comments. I'll be happy to see what you guys have to say about it as well. And yeah, I'll see you guys in another video soon. Like the video if you've enjoyed this. Subscribe to the channel if you're new for all kinds of cool stuff coming up soon. And I'll see you guys very soon. Hold your gun. Capybara. Bye-bye.